And one of the last things I asked her in my interview was, what's been the most surprising thing about finding love in your 80s? And she said that the parts still work and I like it. And I thought, okay, that's a choice, right? You could choose to be at that age and go, yeah, well, maybe the parts work, but I'm not into it. Cool, that's a choice. But man, that was like, I want to be like Diane. That's amazing. It gives me a lot of excitement because I'm going into this next phase, not a different Angela, but like a more evolved Angela, a more Angela, if that makes sense. Like I was always here. Yeah, I was always here, but I'm excited for these decades. I never would have thought that.
Welcome to Unmute with Priya, the podcast where silence ends, voices rise, and women rediscover the freedom to speak and live authentically, especially in life after 40. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Priya Sudarsanam. Let's dive into today's conversation. My guest today is Angela Burke, author of Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, a brutally honest and real funny look at what happens when women hit midlife and realize they've spent years living by rules that were never actually made for them. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Priya. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited because this whole podcast is dedicated to that transition that happens at midlife, especially for women. And when we wake up and say, what the hell have I been doing? So congratulations on the book, first of all. It came out December of 25.
It did. Thank you so much. You know, I actually had this book idea when I was 35 and a lot of transitions, and I was at a crossroads in so many parts of my life, and I had ideas and questions, and I put them all into a folder, and then the folder promptly got buried, and I found it. And actually December of 24, when I retired and I opened up the folder, I was like, well, look at that. I'm still struggling with a lot of things. And so, yeah, it was, kind of 20 years in the making, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was happening in your own life that said, hey, this is the time for it to come out?
Yeah. Well, so, if I go back to what was happening 20 years ago, I was at a transition point. I had 2 of my 3 kids at that point. I was in a marriage that I was certain was probably not going to go the distance. I was at a career crossroads. I noticed my appearance, nothing dramatic or tragic, but you're in your mid-30s, things start to change a little bit. My cycles were starting to change even at that point, and I didn't understand what was happening. And I was looking around and everybody just seemed to have everything together. I was looking at, and this was before social media and anything else. So I was looking at the people in my life and everybody just looked so shiny and put together and nobody was struggling. So I started to write just stuff down. And when I found the folder 20 years later, it was after I retired and I was cleaning out a small pile on my desk. And it was a red folder, like, one of those old timey like file folders. I found it. And as I was going through it, I was like, well, I lived a lot in that 20 years. So that was good. Not all of it was easy and pleasant, but it was good. And some of the things that I was struggling with then, I sort of came out the other end of. But now I had a whole new set of things that I was facing into. Again, I was like looking around and like more people are talking about this stuff. But in my intimate circle, even when I started writing, we weren't having conversations. And also, what I was seeing either on social or with books, it was like all these celebrities and doctors. And it was like, that's great. I love that. But I'm not them. I'm just, a real girl sitting here trying to figure out all the things that are happening, and there were a lot of things. I was adjusting to life as now a retired woman. That was weird. I have 2 of my 3 kids who are out of the house because they're adults, parenting adult kids. That's weird. I'm in a long-term relationship with a man who lives on another continent. That's weird. My body's changing almost daily. That's weird. I was going through another round of post-menopause symptoms, like, that's weird. Like everything was just sort of happening. And I was like, okay, if I'm struggling, I've got to believe other people are too. So I'm just going to try to write this book. Like, why not? And that's what I did.
Amazing. There's so much to unpack in what you just said. The one thing that really struck me is that you knew even 20 years ago. So I think a lot of times in the conversations that I've had, even myself, you think that we hit 40 something and all of a sudden it happened. But I think there was this gradual low grade dissatisfaction from way back. If I can think back to 20, that it just was this underlying thing that caused depression and anxiety.
Absolutely. And it was confusion. I was just confused. And I felt like the weight of the world was on me. And again, I think I felt alone in that because I
Yeah.
was looking around and my perception of everybody else was they were presenting so like perfect, right? And I'd be coming to work with like poop stains and spit up stains and I just felt windblown and messy and like I must not know how to do this. And so that is another feeling that compounds all the confusion, all the low grade depression and anxiety is I'm alone in this. And turns out what I've realized through this process of writing the book and writing for my Substack is I'm not alone. I was never alone. And I
Yeah.
wasn't the only one. And I wish I would have known that then. I wish somebody would have helped me to see that then because I think my experience would have been a little bit different. Not like those things would have gone away, but that's
Right.
what I think a Real Girl's Guide has helped me to affirm for myself.
Even though you felt alone and you were writing these things down, did you voice it to anyone? Were you able to have that voice or even to your partner, your husband? And
No, not 20 years ago. I just, and there were a couple girlfriends who I remember sharing this wild book idea that I had and I would get the, "Oh, that's cute. Like that sounds like a fun project." And then it was usually followed up with, "Do you really think you could take that on right now? You've got 2 kids, you've got a husband, you've got a full-time career. Like, really? That's what you want to do right now?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe not." Okay. But we weren't talking about those things. It's
yeah,
funny. I didn't because I just take one slice of those things, right? Take the perimenopause or whatever. For me, my cycle started to change when I was 35. And and I entered, I guess I completed menopause at the end of my 47th year. So that, you get to the magic 12-month window where you don't have a period. And so that was, a 12-year span, right? But during that 12 years, even into my 40s, I didn't know what perimenopause was. That was not a word that I picked up. People around me weren't talking about it. My doctor wasn't talking about it. And so I was just like, oh, this is just what happens. And even my mom, like I love my mom. She and I are 19 years apart, but her experience was very different. And I didn't even have the thought to ask the questions.
yeah, yeah.
Because it's like I was conditioned to just suck it up, buttercup. Like that was probably my mantra, right? Suck it up, buttercup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that resonates because I think mine started around 35 and it was
Yeah.
a time of real anxiety because I noticed it was irregular for the first time and I hadn't had
Yes.
kids yet. And all of a sudden it was the time clock started ticking saying, it's starting. And that created more
Yeah.
anxiety, more depression. Like the
Yeah.
kids weren't, I didn't have kids. I wasn't in a marriage. It was just like, and
Yeah.
it was I mean, I feel like the timeline that you're mentioning through 47, it really like that speaks to me. That was my timeline as well. And it was like,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
brutal. Spoiler, the symptoms just keep coming. So
yeah,
I was very naive. And I thankfully, because I really thought, oh my gosh, I was the one who missed this class. But when I was writing Real Girls Guide, part of what I did was it was my story, but then other women's stories and then speaking to experts. But even just that topic alone, right? I was under the impression that you finish that magic 12-month period and you turn in your car and it's
yeah,
done. Like, woo. And it was reaffirmed for me that that is not true. Not only from my own experience, having now, I think I'm on like my third wave of new symptoms, but also through the women that I met and spoke to in building Real Girls Guide. That somewhere we've got to like remind people that you don't get to turn in your card after
yeah,
12 months of no period. But I was very naive. I thought, oh, that's it. Cool. It was really hard,
yeah,
but I'm done now.
yeah. So beyond the physical symptoms, I just want to get your expertise and your input. And what are some of the biggest lies that women have been taught about who they're supposed to be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of these stories are probably different for each of us and they're deeply layered and modeled, right? So
Right.
for me and for a lot of the women that I've spoken to in building out the Real Girls Guide, they come in packages that look and feel like, you know, we're the peacekeepers. We're the ones who carry the proverbial clipboard for everybody. We're the ones who fix the problems and we're supposed to handle it all and handle it all for everyone and that somehow our happiness cannot come at the discomfort of people around us. Like that is just not what we're taught. At least it wasn't what I was taught. And it wasn't an overt lesson, but it was a subtle lesson. And then over time, I think some of us women come like we get rewarded, and they might not be positive rewards. They might not be explicit rewards, but you get rewarded for doing that.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of fallacy in that, right? But those stories are layered and they're rooted and they're modeled and they are perfected over a long period of time. But I think that they are rooted in this idea that, we are supposed to just take it. We're
Supposed to
supposed to be
take it.
quiet. We're
Yeah.
supposed to be small. We're supposed to shrink. We don't deserve to be happy. Our pleasure can't
Right.
come first. These things are wrong. We're wrong for wanting different or more. And I heard that echoed
Yeah.
through the women that I spoke to.
And I've had a few guests on who talk about the anger, that we weren't
Yeah.
allowed to be angry. So even now, it's my cousin, she's, 20 years that she didn't work. She's a doctor and she didn't get to work. And now she's going back. Her kids are older. But she would always tell me that everybody was angry. And then she would show anger and all of a sudden it's like, why are you angry? What she was, there was never, you weren't allowed to do anything. She just had to take care of the family and just be a good girl. And
Yeah.
so there's that yeah, that story that
It
I feel
is
like it's perpetuated.
it is perpetuated, and it's, again, like it's not always overt, but it
Yeah,
is a modeling, a behavior, a set of patterns that are established in us, a lot of us, when we're young, and they kind of carry over and then they get reinforced, whether we're reinforcing them or others around us are. The anger is one. I think the one thing that I've been working a lot on is saying no. And because
right.
my whole thing was like, how do I say no without following it up with a dissertation?
Right,
Or, like this deep explanation because I was disappointing somebody. And now, no is a full sentence. I'm not available. That's 3 words.
exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
No goes a long way. I'm with you there. I used to have to say no because I'm
mhm.
no, and then and yeah, like you said, the
The
dissertation following it
dissertation,
up.
like, oh, and for me, it was also just not verbalizing that, voicing
Right.
the word no and feeling, but it was also the feeling that I felt I was going to create in other people, which was disappointment, discomfort, something that was negative for them. So, like, I somehow had to own that. Why?
Yeah.
Why did I think that? It's weird. But yeah, here we
So
are.
when did you start to rediscover yourself?
I think, I write about this in Real Girl's Guide. I think a lot of the rediscovery probably happened in my 40s, and it was probably the most significant as a result of getting a divorce, right? So, I had spent a lot of my adult years carefully crafting a set of roles, right? I was a really important and dedicated professional. I was a really dedicated and focused and attentive mother. I was a wife. I was still a daughter. I'm still a sister. I'm still all these other things. But, I built this version of my
Yeah.
life and a picture of what my life and my future were going to hold. And I'd say that the divorce was probably the first time where a lot of these roles in this idyllic picture that I painted was not going to be my future. And
Yeah.
so I sort of had to I had to accept that. And then I had to kind of rediscover and reacquaint myself with me. And it wasn't easy. And the backdrop of all that, which was maybe ironic or just, coincidental timing, was I was in the throes. I didn't realize how close I was to that entering post-menopause
Right.
at that point. This was all my mid-40s, and I was dealing with, like, rage and all these things and the hormones, and I was like, "I don't understand. Like, I think I'm losing my mind." But it all kind of hit me at once, and yeah, it was definitely a very, very hard time, but it also was a very important time because I had to rediscover, a lot of things. I had to remind myself of a lot of things.
What did you learn about yourself, or what did that period teach you?
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned was, you know, a lot of the strengths and traits that I sort of told myself I didn't have, I actually did. And I always had them. I just hid them or I edited them out of my existence. So that was one thing. The other thing I discovered about myself is that I'm super resilient. And I knew this,
Yeah.
but I am very, very resilient. And if somebody asked me how I would describe myself, that's one of the first words that I use. I never would have done that in my 20s or 30s. I didn't consider myself resilient then. And I think the third one is, and this is, admittedly not something that I loved talking about in the book, but I didn't really understand how my body worked. I didn't understand how I worked. I didn't have a relationship with things like intimacy and pleasure myself. And I lived a lot of life just kind of going, well, I guess that's not like important. And I don't just not that I don't deserve it, but like I'm here to just make everybody else comfortable and happy. And,
It sounds
that's
like
just what I do.
downplaying your own needs.
Yeah, downplaying my own needs and my own understanding of my relationship with things like intimacy and like, and that I was somehow wrong for wanting more.
Right.
So yeah, that I didn't love coming to terms with that, but it was the truth.
I something in your and this is definitely what happened to me as I started to come into terms with what I want and actually finding my voice
Mm,
and realizing, hey, I'm a person. I'm not just there for your entertainment, just in any area, whether it's
mhm,
listening or whether, anything.
whatever.
That that it wasn't just about intimate relationships, like, friendships actually started to leave my life, like,
Oh
women
yeah,
leaving my life, and it was quite a painful process. I was hanging on to them with dear life, and you write about that in your book
yeah.
as well, like, about relationship shifting, and if
Oh
you can
yeah.
speak on that, did you lose friends during that time as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and I don't know. I think what happened is I was discovering the me I always was. I was kind of reacquainting myself with her, and I was also not even taking like a specific inventory, but as I became more confident, as I became more, kind of 10 toes in on everything that I was standing in and wanted and was tolerating, not tolerating, the boundaries started to emerge. The tenor of some of my relationships shifted, right? And some people don't like that. Some people don't like when you show up different.
Yeah,
And I observed that. And it was jarring for a lot of people. And so I think the composition of some of the relationships have changed for sure. Maybe some of the proximity that maybe things I used to hold really close, I don't hold as close. I think some of the weight changes. How much weight do I put in? How much effort do I put into certain things? And I'm evaluating those things. And that was one of the other, again, writing this book was so strange for me because a lot of it was very cathartic for me, but it also was this reminder that I was never alone. I'm not alone. It was talking to so many women for Real Girls Guide and the experts. I was affirmed. A lot of the things that I was feeling and seeing and experiencing, I was affirmed. And everybody's story looks a little bit different, right? And everybody's experiences, but there were so
right.
many red threads that connected a lot of the themes. And so I think that notion of, relationships do change.
Yeah.
Your role in them, your tolerance of them, your ability to give, the level of effort that's matched or unmatched, and the evaluation is different.
Yeah. As you talk about these changes and then finding yourself, finding that person that was always there, one thing that used to really trigger me with what these people, as I was changing, these people would
Yeah,
say to me is, that's not like you. That's not you. And they were defining me
yeah,
because they were so used to me being just so quiet and complacent
yeah,
and yes, ma'am, yes, sir, kind of
yeah,
attitude about it. That really, really, still to this day, when somebody says, "That's not you," I'm like, "You have absolutely no clue who I am
yeah.
to be
It's
able to say that."
it's like somebody telling me how I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me how feel. Like I needed that. Like what? But it is. I think that and that is hard, right? People like as much as we define ourselves, people get comfortable with how we present in the world. And I'm not saying that men don't have the same experiences and struggles. I'm not a man. I'm sure that they do. I think it is different for women, and I think what's different for women is we get to these crossroads in life, right? Where we don't get to just claim one slice of life that feels destabilizing. It's like all of these things are happening at one time. That's the other sort of interesting, reality of as I started writing the book and talking to so many women, it was like you don't get the luxury of just, like, let me just go work on the physical thing, or let me go work on the emotional thing, or let me go work on the relationship thing. It's all of these things are happening at one time. And then the backdrop of the hormones. It's like, wow, we just really cannot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the way that you're breaking it down. When you say it like that, we are going through so much at the same time.
And no wonder it feels crazy. No wonder. Like, it's just no wonder. And, talk about doing the inventory. If you just stop and think, like, yes, it's a lot of things that change at one time. And that's, somebody had asked me that too. Like, why is midlife so hard? It's like, well, for women, I can't speak to men. We go through so many changes and evolutions. And for women, in this span of, and there's no one magic decade, right? Like, oh, your 30s isn't midlife or your
Right.
50s aren't midlife. Like, it's just this change and evolution. And that's you kind of keep throwing everything into the mix. It's like, yeah, no wonder it feels so hard.
Yeah. And I feel like with this midlife, it's also this wake up to, hey, I have this much amount of time left. I've
Yeah.
spent this much time on something. I got to live this the way I want to live this. I don't have time to waste anymore.
Percent. And there's a new sense of urgency, right? Like the proverbial clock is not just
Yeah.
it's like a dare now, right? Like the clock is like daring you to do something. And also, I think too, if rewinding the clock back, and I've heard this echoed. The oldest real girl in the book that I interviewed is a woman. She's in her 80s, and she wrote her first book in her late 70s. It was her way of dealing with grief after losing her second husband. And she was not an author before, so she writes this book, which I think is amazing, right? Like how badass is that? 78, 80, you're writing a book. And so, and I was able to connect with women who were in their 60s and 70s, and it's been amazing. But if you were to have asked me in my 30s, how excited would you be about the prospect of turning 60? I would have been like, is negative zero a number? Like, can I give you about 10 million negative zeros? I never would have fathomed that I would be sitting here in my mid 50s now looking forward to the decades to come
Yeah.
because of this shift, right? That I've made in myself, and because of the shift that so many of us are like, you can't help but be drawn to this, like the law of attraction here, as people around you are shifting and this vibe is changing. It's like, you're drawn in. One of the things about this one particular woman that I interviewed for Real Girls Guide, her interview was lovely. Like, I can't say enough about her. Her book is amazing. But she went on to find love in her early 80s, so like 81, 82. And
Oh,
one of the last
wow.
things I asked her in my interview was, what's been the most surprising thing about finding love in your 80s? And she said that the parts still work and I like it. And I thought, okay, that's a choice, right? You can
Yeah.
choose to be at that age and go, yeah, well, maybe the parts work, but I'm not into it. Cool. That's a choice. But man, that was like, I want to be like Diane. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
So it
amazing.
it gives me a lot of excitement because I'm going into this next phase, a very not a different Angela, but like a more evolved Angela, a more Angela, if that makes sense. Like I was
More
always
Angela, Angela.
here.
I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was always here, but I'm excited for these decades. I never would have thought that, honestly. I would have been like, 60s, 70s, like, oof. But now I'm really looking forward to them.
Would you say you're happier?
I would say I'm happier. I would say I'm more content. I would
Content.
say that I'm more settled. And
Yeah.
to me, being more settled, being more confident, being more sure, being more steady makes me happy. And look, there's plenty of stuff that I'm still dealing with. There's stuff that I don't even know that's going to hit me, that's going to come, but I think I'm steadier.
Yeah. Steady's a good word.
Yeah, I think I'm steadier, and happiness for me comes when I feel steady. And so, yeah, I would say I'm definitely happier. It's not like I'm happier with I'm happier with me.
Yeah.
I'm happier with the choices that I'm making, and I'm happier with the decisions, right? Everything's a choice, and I'm deciding to do this. So I'm happy with me, and I think that makes then my surrounds more pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like that's more sustainable. It's nothing external. There's nothing. It's totally internal.
It is, and I mean, if you think about it, what can you control? What can we control? Very little, right?
Very little.
You just can't. But I can control myself, and I also, I think that this midlife and actually writing Real Girls Guide actually allowed me to reflect back a little bit too, and it was a good reminder. Like, hey, you've been through some stuff, and you got it. Like, it didn't
Yeah.
feel like it in the moment, but you did it. And hearing women who shared their stories and being able to sit with experts who gave a perspective that maybe I didn't even have or never would have had, it reminded me, like, what got me here might not be what gets me where I'm going, but I got here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that women should, when you're going through this journey to get to this place where you're like, I got here, and to
Yeah,
actually
I got here.
feel that satisfaction
Yeah.
and that you got there. Yeah.
Yeah, you
That's a
got there. And
wonderful.
was it beautiful and elegant and picture perfect and smooth and, no, of course not. But most of the best things that I found in my own life I have achieved or attained were probably extra messy. Like they were just from the messiest of origins, right? Yeah.
One of the experts in your book says solo doesn't mean small, it means sovereign. I love using that word sovereign.
Yeah.
So what does sovereignty mean to you now?
I think it means so I'm gonna give you an analogy. You know, when you get on an airplane, what is the thing that we're told about the mask, right? In the event of a loss of cabin pressure, a mask will drop down. What are you supposed to do with that mask?
Put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's very hard for me to do that. And I even, I travel with my kids who are older now, but I even have to think like, and I travel a lot. So my Aussie man lives in Aussie. So we're always traveling. I have to remind myself, especially when I'm traveling with the kids, like, and they're old now, like, okay, remember, you can't help them unless you help yourself.
Yeah.
Because my natural instinct is, no, of course I'm going to put their mask on first. I'll hold my breath. I'll put theirs on first and then no, but I can't help them unless I help myself. So I think for me, sorry, a very long wind up to a very, very clear and succinct question. I think that sovereignty and solo aging is, putting your mask on first and kind of putting yourself back at the center of your own life and also standing 10 toes in on decisions that you make. Right.
Yeah.
So, if I'm going to decide to go get a facial or Botox, like I'm standing 10 toes into that. That's my choice. I'm not putting it on you. I'm not putting it on anybody else. But I'm I'm comfortable in the decisions that I'm making, and I'm putting my own mask on first because I know, and this isn't about me going like, well, everybody else can go fend for himself or herself. That's not what I'm saying. But I
Right.
know that I have to take care of me in order to be the best version for myself and also to be a version to the people that I care about. So that's how I think about it. And it's very foreign to a lot of us.
Yeah,
I think a lot of
definitely.
a lot of women to think in those terms.
Goes back to what you said in the beginning. We're just from such a young age, we're just kind of reared to take care of others and put our needs second. So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
great thing. Put your mask on first. It's a great analogy
Yeah.
to visualize. Yeah. So how can people get access to your book and how can people get access to you and more of your content?
Yeah. So my book, Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, where you like to buy your books. I write for Substack, so realgirlsguidetomidlife.com. I write about 2 or 3 times a week, depending on my level of exhaustion. I'm on Instagram at realgirlsguide55, and I have a website, realgirlsguide.com. So yeah, I'm on all the platforms, and I would love to connect. And the Substack has been so fun for me, honestly. I started that in the process of writing my book. And it was really just a little bit of a way to test my writing and, get disciplined about writing. And it's been so great to build our little community there. And I have such fun with it. Such fun.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
make sure to put those links in the show notes.
Awesome.
This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like we could keep going. There's so much to unpack. But for anybody who's listening to this and they're deep in the trenches of it, they're in this, whatever stage they're in, but resonating with this and they're listening, what message do you have for that woman? Could be it even a man who's listening to this that's in transition as well, who feels like, oh my gosh, how do I do this?
Yep. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you don't have to have a perfect plan.
Yeah,
One small decision, saying something that you want or you feel or you need out loud to yourself, out loud to yourself, changes your thought pattern. And sometimes that's enough. So just start.
so just start.
Yeah, just start.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Angela, thank you for being my guest today. Thank you for this amazing conversation. I think it's going to resonate so much with the people that listen to this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Priya. It's been a pleasure.
And this show is brought to you by Project Icon.